Hello and welcome to What's Your Solution? This is the series where we try to look a little ahead. We've been asking political parties what their solutions are to the very real problems that this country faces. We've already looked at the economy, we looked at the problem of corruption. Today, we're going to take a look at foreign policy or the problems around it. How will the political parties deal with Pakistan and with China and with US, cross-border terrorism, a whole lot of issues. Defense is another thing we'll try and get covered in this particular show. What will be their specific plans to deal with these problems? That's what we're going to try and get to. And we've got three of the most outstanding diplomats in one way or the other that this country has had, or people connected with foreign policy in one way or the other. Dr. Shashi Tharoor, who was former MOS and is right now MOS HRD, so it's great to have you with us. Hardeep Puri, who's an envoy to the UN, India's envoy to the UN, and is the leader of the BJP, so you'll be talking to us about the BJP's foreign policy. Pawan Verma of the JDU, former IFS officer, also former ambassador to Bhutan. Thank you all so much for joining us. It'll be such a pleasure to hear from each of you. Why don't I start off with you, Dr. Tharoor. Let's say you get another 5 years. The opinion polls aren't indicating that, but let's say you get another 5 years. What will you do to fix the foreign policy problems that we have?
For us, foreign policy is not just a foreign issue. It's about us at home in India. It affects every Indian, especially the young generation that's about to come up and grow up. So for us, what we're trying to do, for example, is to ensure that India uses its international relations to promote its own domestic transformation, its economic growth and development. That we, for example, think about energy security, about food security, as part of the challenges of diplomacy, which we've been trying to do in our years in office, that we use economic development as our leitmotif. At the same time, we need to ensure we have tranquil borders. We know that those who need to invest in our economy for us to grow, so we have resources to share with our people, will not do so if ours is a war zone. We need to have peace. At the same time, we need to ensure that our neighbors enjoy good relations with us. So we have a very coherent vision of where all this fits in.
Specifically, what will be the steps that you will take?
Specifically, we're going to work on improved bilateral relations as well as multilateral relations in the South Asian neighborhood. We're going to continue to play an influential role on global forums, the United Nations, a number of multilateral organizations. We will continue, of course, to give the utmost importance to relationships with the big powers in the world. China has an unresolved border with us, but we have good trade relations which have been growing. We'll try and make sure that balance is well maintained. With the US, there's been a sort of reset in our relationship, which we need to take forward to ensure that, in particular, we can get from Western countries the kind of technology and the kind of economic and scientific cooperation that will help us move our goals forward. Bottom line, everything is about what helps India and Indians to cope with the challenges and opportunities of the 21st century better.
All right, can I just start off by questioning you on the agenda, and then I'm going to allow the others to question you on that agenda before we go to their agenda. In UPA 1, it did seem as if there was a lot of attention that was paid to foreign policy in some of these issues. The nuclear deal, it was one of the landmark moments that took place. There were efforts taken to proceed with what are we doing with Pakistan, what can possibly be done to set the agenda. Last 3 or 4 years, all of that has gone. It's gone so much. It seems to have gone so much into the background that the government, for example, doesn't even talk about the nuclear deal or what happened to it. Relations with the US seem to be stagnating after that reset that you spoke about, and so on and so forth. So somewhere along the way, has the UPA and the Congress party lost interest?
Not at all. I would contest that interpretation completely. You mentioned the nuclear deal. It ended the nuclear apartheid we were suffering. We were in a position where our nuclear scientists couldn't get visas to 45 countries in the world. You know, we were really isolated in the international nuclear community. We no longer are. It's true that American companies have not been able to invest because of a nuclear liability law that Parliament passed that was not satisfactory to American companies, but Russians have invested, French have invested. Our nuclear self-sufficiency direction
but I was sort of referring to the fact that it doesn't seem to catch a mention anywhere in the manifesto.
No, our manifesto has not spent a great deal of space on foreign policy. It said a few of these things, but in brief, because the thrust was very much on domestic policy. And given, for example, the mess the BJP made of its manifesto on foreign policy, it's probably just as well that one doesn't go into more details than one needs to. We have actually run the country's foreign policy for 10 years. We have a pretty good sense of where we've been going. I just want to challenge your notion that we've been neglecting it. You mentioned Pakistan as an example. After 26/11, naturally there was a major setback in our ability to take forward some of our initiatives. But we have gradually moved forward. There has been a recent thaw as recently as the last couple of years.
How would you like to take him on his agenda for the next 5 years?
You know, what we've got from him is pure waffle. 10 years of uninterrupted mismanagement of foreign policy has been characterized by indecision, hesitation, and confusion. As a result, our relationships in the neighborhood are at an all-time low. We need to critically reboot foreign policy to revive the momentum in our relationship with countries like the United States and China, and we need to take a host of other steps. The BJP manifesto, which he likes to comment on without commenting on his own manifesto, in fact does not contain any country-specific references for the simple reason that we need to now rework these relationships.
I think the UPA government did not have its eye on the ball as far as foreign policy is concerned. It was ad hoc, it was reactive, it was not part of an overall security and strategic doctrine. There was an institutional devaluation of the leadership in the MEA. For 4 years, inexplicably, you had an external affairs minister who had neither the interest nor the talent for foreign policy.
They should have appointed
and therefore, there was a sense of rudderlessness, a sense of not having a kind of focused leadership. Now, this is something India cannot afford. And as I will, when you give me an opportunity, I want to give the reasons why. This is the time for this country to look forward as a major power with a definitive foreign policy doctrine.
I think we had one. I think I should respond to
you had
on
a
this.
foreign
minister. The Prime Minister articulated very coherently
in UPA
vision. In UPA, he's talking about UPA 1.
But in UPA 2, he didn't articulate anything.
No, but the so-called Manmohan doctrine, which had been articulated in UPA 1, which carried on in
silence and more silence.
No, I'm sorry. There's a whole panoply of speeches on foreign policy that he's made, which have been studied and passed by others. He was India's face and voice in a number of international forums, from the G20 to various other bodies and the UN.
So in a sense, you agree with him that we didn't have a foreign minister?
He was highly respected.
No, he's endorsing that.
No, I think we have an excellent foreign minister right now, and I think that there may have been differences of style and approach in the previous foreign minister, but the issue is the Prime Minister is the voice and face of the country.
You'll have to concede this. We can agree or disagree on other things.
Pavan, the Prime Minister became one of the most admired world leaders.
But you have to see it from the Foreign Office point of view. When you have a weak foreign minister, or a foreign minister where the perception is that his application of mind on issues to provide institutional advice, the MEA, the External Affairs Ministry, is not a mechanical accessory of the Prime Minister's office.
We have one of the world's best foreign services in terms of professional expertise, and yet I think what Pavan is saying, which I fully endorse, we have been let down by the political class. Now they choose their instruments without sufficient care, and we can develop that.
So can I ask you now? Let me turn to your agenda now.
Yeah.
If the BJP comes to power, what specifically will you do to fix the problems that we are facing right now?
We have to set right our relationships in the immediate neighborhood. We also have to critically work on our relationships with the United States and with China. What we need to do is to rework and reboot those relationships, and that's what the BJP manifesto talks about. One, we must be able to engage our neighbors and make clear to them what our red lines are. Our manifesto specifically says that we need to take extra efforts in dealing with them. If necessary, also take tough positions and drive home that we have red lines which cannot be crossed. With the United States, you have $100 billion annual trade and trade in goods and services turnover. By any yardstick, that's one of the most important relationships. And yet, it was called a strategic partnership in 2010. We have a senior diplomat strip search. But look at the three important areas. In economic terms, the United States has spent the last 1 year subjecting India to an unrelenting pressure on issues relating to intellectual property rights, on issues relating to the whole economic policy.
So you take a tougher stance with them or a softer stance?
Well, let's be absolutely clear. Tough and muscular policy, robust policy, these should be reserved for Charles Atlas and the techno gym. When you're dealing with foreign policy, you're dealing with the realm of ideas. With China, let's be very clear. The Chinese have been extremely active in an aggressive way. We've had incursions into our territory, 18 kilometers in the Dipsang Valley in Ladakh. There have been exercises with Pakistan in Tibet. We are wavering on the issue of establishing a consulate in Lhasa. But most important, we export $17 billion worth of goods to China. They export $50 billion. We are talking about $100 billion trade turnover, which is going to be at our expense in the deficit. But most important, you've had 17 rounds of border talks with the Chinese. Please shed the policy of conspiratorial silence. Declassify the Henderson Brooks report. Tell the people of India what has happened in these 17 rounds of border talks.
Okay.
But most important, sit down with the Chinese and find out what a working relationship will be.
All right. Now let me come to you and
But
say
I have
that-
other questions on the foreign policy manifesto.
Let all of us give a
okay,
chance.
Because
okay,
he
okay.
needs to make a statement.
Pavan asked a question. I wasn't asked to.
Okay, let him quickly ask a question.
So,
So, we are already running
okay.
over on time. but still.
On Pakistan, on the US, for example, I believe we took as robust a policy as any government could have done, and as a result, foreign diplomats have told me we won. We won on the issue of the misbehavior with our diplomat. But I want to ask you a question. Your manifesto says that India will be a natural home for persecuted Hindus. I guess that leaves out Sikhs and others. We've civilizationally been a home for persecuted Jews, persecuted Parsis, persecuted people of all faiths. We are a syncretic civilization. Since when does the BJP's bigotry now start to infect our foreign policy?
Oh, come on, bigotry, using tough big words. Listen, we have been a natural
very
home
small
to
word.
Jews. We have been a natural home to Jews fleeing persecution. We got
what I
5 million, 10 million refugees from Bangladesh, both Hindus and Muslims.
But
Please
hang on,
read the
but
manifesto carefully.
actually, hang on. I have your
Please read it
manifesto
carefully.
here.
What does it say?
I have your manifesto says India shall remain a natural home for persecuted Hindus. It uses the word Hindus, and they shall be welcome to seek refuge here.
Yes.
I think the point
I
is
think
making-
it's very unfair.
supposing they
Well,
persecuted
it's
Sikhs.
unfair to
supposing they
Hardeep.
persecuted Sikhs
Suppose
in
they
another
persecuted
country.
Sikhs.
No,
Hardeep.
no,
Suppose
no,
they
no,
welcome
it's
Sikhs and
unfair to
Hindus
Hardeep.
alike. No, let's wait. Let me
What do you
explain
mean?
this
Sikhs
to
and
you.
Hindus-
No,
Sikhs
no,
and
hold
Hindus
on,
are
hold
alike,
on.
so the
We
Sikhs
have
will be covered
always,
by
we
the
have
Hindu
always
clause.
provided a home. We've always provided refuge and sanctuary to people of all denominations from all over the
but
world.
that's not what your manifesto
But
says.
it doesn't say that the others are not welcome. Why are you?
Excuse me.
Why does it say
One
only
second.
Hindus are welcome?
Hardeep, one second. In that case, your thing should have said India shall remain a natural home
Shall
for persecuted.
remain as it is for others as well.
Yeah.
That is
It doesn't
stringent
say
on
that. Your manifesto doesn't say that. If you had said India shall remain a natural home for persecuted Hindus and they should be welcome to seek refuge here,
This
other
includes-
persecuted denominations will also be welcome
That
and we'll
goes
take
without
care
saying.
of them.
Let me add an
goes without
addendum to
saying.
it. Let me add an
Why don't you
addendum to
mention
it. I am adding an addendum to it.
You know-
Listen, I'm adding an addendum to it here, and I will get the party headquarters to make a clarification.
Okay.
A spokesman will say on the record that we
I will be
continue.
astonished if they say.
Oh yes, you will.
Okay, you promise
I will
that?
get it done.
You
I will
want
get it
to-
done.
This is a promise.
I will get it
Because
done.
I'll tell you something.
Because
to
this
be
is
fair
a
to him,
drop-
to be fair
No,
to him,
no,
I'll tell you
look-
what his manifesto
You
says.
know,
His
I know-
manifesto says protecting Indians overseas from exploitation or threats will remain a paramount concern.
No, no, let me
but this
tell you-
is all Indians,
No,
it's
no,
not
all,
only Hindus.
all Indian people of Indian origin, it should say. People of Indian origin. Let me say, I
Hardeep,
accept.
our basic point, I think the point that he is making is
Point
the
is
point
well
which I'm
taken, point
agreeing
is well
with.
taken, but let
Point
me
I'm
answer
agreeing
it.
with is that if their Sikhs are suddenly being persecuted
Oh, they're
for some
always
reason,
welcome. They're always
they're
welcome.
persecuted in England or they're persecuted in France,
No,
India
let
should
me-
be home to
let
them
me-
also.
Let me answer this. No,
Or
I've not
Muslims,
answered the
Indian
question.
Muslims.
You know, robust foreign policy, robust policy with the United States. You know, when cyber security, the Snowden revelations came, Brazil, which had been snooped on the way we had, they cancelled their state visit. Dilma Rousseff cancelled it. You know what we did? We not only went there, asked for lunch, but the people who did the snooping, they were co-opted into our own policy formulation. So please,
Fair enough.
so much for a robust policy
Anyway,
within
hang
the
on,
United States.
Okay, so you promised us that tomorrow
Yes,
you're
yes.
going to get a clarification.
Not tomorrow.
to
The
this.
day after your show is telecast,
that's what I mean.
there will be a listing that what we mean, all other people of all other, religions and cultural backgrounds.
We will
etc.
wait
The
for that.
signal that is being sent by this
Well,
is an
that's all right.
unambiguously bigoted
That's
signal.
this semantic quibbling on drafting. that will be corrected.
Okay,
But
great.
Vikram-
I'm glad to get that assurance from you. Now let's come to the JDU. If the JDU
Vikram-
forms, if for some reason the
Yeah.
JDU does form the government, it's not.
Why not? Why are you in such doubt? Why do you say if for some reason?
Because
I mean,
the-
there's
I'll
an
give
election.
you- I'll give you an
doubts that they
answer.
can do
I'll
it
give you an
You never
answer.
know. The JDU and the BJP could come together again.
You
so
will never.
that-
No, the remarriage will take place when we have the assembly elections there, not
He's
before that.
already predicting it.
A remarriage. Okay.
We have externally sponsored terrorism, homegrown terrorism, and insurgency in the country. So for us in this country, foreign policy must be embedded. I believe, forget the acrimonies or differences of the past. For any government that comes in the future, let foreign policy be embedded in a strategic and security doctrine. China follows a policy of containment of India with engagement. Pakistan follows a policy of explosive aggression and tactical appeasement. We merely react as this policy keeps unfolding. When they are trying to abuse you, we fall in line. When they are aggressive, we react. We have not anticipated these moves as part of a long-term, thought-out, carefully calibrated vision of what we need to do in this most troubled neighborhood of the world. So let me give examples. For instance, China says that people from Arunachal Pradesh require stapled visas. I believe, Shashi, our response should have been to say that we then demand that Chinese of Tibetan origin need stapled visas. China protests when we are foraging for oil in the South China Sea, that we are in their sovereign territorial waters. Our response should be to have immediately raised what they are doing in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Pakistan-occupied Kashmir is internationally disputed territory. The South China Sea is not. The first theoretician of statecraft, Chanakya.
Kautilya. Yeah.
Kautilya said, Sam Dama Danda Bhed, which means reconciliation, it means inducement, it means deterrent action where required, and it means subversion where necessary. This is a flexible strategic security doctrine which allows two nations to talk. If we need to talk to Pakistan, we must. But we must be also capable of deterrent action where required.
And subversion.
And subversion.
There's a JDU is talking about subversion as a conscious instrument of policy.
But you also said you should have aggressive measures which are possible.
Yes,
What's wrong with subversion?
Subversion.
What's wrong with a little bit of subversion here and there?
A diplomat,
Sam Danda Bhed means,
Vikram Chandra chooses his words very carefully. If you're talking about I agree with the rest of what he's
So
saying.
you have a problem with subversion?
Well, I wouldn't discuss subversion through this audience.
No,
number one.
He's not foreign minister right now.
I am just
He's
telling
not foreign.
you.
He's going to be culture minister when
I
JDU
am
becomes
going to tell you.
Culture minister.
I am going to tell you, we need to evolve this strategic and security doctrine. I'm
Right,
sorry
you said
to say, the BJP or nor the Congress, and this may
It
unite
can come
them,
from the JDU.
Beyond partisan politics, Vikram, there is a demand for the nation.
All right, we've got your agenda.
Yeah.
I think we've got a sense of
Second point is, there are many issues in foreign policy which happened during the Congress rule, where the states are getting involved. We had the Teesta Accord, to which West Bengal did not agree. We had the Tamil Nadu issue, where we had the Sri Lankan
get the states
problem.
okay,
So
Pavan,
let me just finish just one last point. Therefore, now there is a need for the center to remain the pivotal agency for foreign policy, but to have much better consultative processes with states in order to anticipate that demand. Last point. We need to integrate security, defense and foreign policy in a far better mechanism than we have
Integrated
today.
manner. That's what he says. I agree with him totally.
Okay, and now that you agreed with them. Now, any specific objections to what he said, and specifically the problem of getting the states in? Because that, frankly, is a fresh crisis that's happened in the last 4 years. Your Bangladesh policy is held up because the Trinamool Congress doesn't agree. Your Sri Lanka policy is now held hostage by Tamil Nadu.
Yeah.
Same is going to happen elsewhere. Tomorrow, your Bhutan policy will depend on what West Bengal is saying, and Nepal policy will be dictated by Uttar Pradesh. Where are you going to end with all this?
Look, the constitution is absolutely clear, and I don't think any government which gets elected post May 2014 is going to be able to change that. I think Articles 246 and 253, if I remember correctly, clearly say it's the centre's responsibility to
But the states are holding it up.
But no, hold on. But the BJP's position and our prime ministerial candidate's position is very clear. You need to consult the states. You need to involve them as possible stakeholders. Let me go back a few years. We were negotiating an agreement on agriculture in the WTO, okay? And therefore, the states which are primarily agricultural, states wanted to be consulted. It is not anyone's case that they must be allowed to be holding a veto on the centre's action. That is a reflection on very poor and ineffective governance.
Is that what's happened
Poor
sometimes?
and ineffective governance.
I mean, Tamil Nadu's been
you
given the
can't
veto.
control your own minister.
The Tamil Nadu's got a veto on Sri Lanka relations. Mamata Banerjee's got a veto on Bangladesh relations.
No, in fact, the UPA government has both conducted consultations and moved the process forward after those consultations. In the case of Bangladesh, for example, the biggest obstacle was not Mamata Banerjee, who doesn't have enough seats in the Rajya Sabha to prevent the ratification of the boundary agreement, but the BJP which refused to cooperate with the Bangladesh agreement.
This is completely wrong. This is completely wrong, and no, you can say anything. It's your word against mine. I can tell you what happened.
I was.
No, what do you mean you weren't there? I'm here now. I don't know where you are. But the issue is the following.
Sir,
issue
what
is
kind of
issue must have
belligerence is this?
consultation. You
This is what we can
wanted
look forward to
muscular
under the
policy.
BJP. So then the ASEAN Free Trade Agreement, for example, my own state of Kerala was consulted and objected to the agreement, arguing that palm oil producers and coconut
Shashi,
growers in
can I ask you
Kerala
a
would
question?
suffer.
One second.
But the government, having consulted them, explained, assured certain protections and went ahead with the agreement.
Okay, fair enough.
So the point is that the government takes the ultimate responsibility for doing the right thing in the national interest, but has to be aware of the views of various states.
Can I take a break right now? I want to get the audience in and then look at another couple of aspects and specifically perhaps get responses to what we're going to do in areas like if there is another terrorist attack, what would be the specific policy? I'd like to find out from all the
Unleash
gentlemen
Hardeep
out
on
here.
them. That'll be it.
Unleash who?
Hardeep.
Well, that's one possible solution, but we'll see
I
whether
used to
that
chair.
works.
I used to chair
All right.
the Security
I'm gonna
Council's
take-
Counter-Terrorism Committee.
I'm
I
going
may
to
have
take
a
a
few
break.
ideas.
This is going to continue for hours if I don't have a break at some point. So I'm going to take a break, quick break, and we'll be back after that.